Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars through the viewport. His ship patrolled the outer edge of human space, near the colony world called New Terra. It was routine work, the kind that made young officers bored and veterans comfortable. Jake was neither bored nor comfortable. 20 years in space had taught him that quiet moments never lasted. The communications officer, Lieutenant Kevin Shaw, looked up from his station. His face had gone pale. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Unknown origin. It's not human." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Humanity had been searching for alien life for 300 years. They had found bacteria on Mars, strange fungi on Europa's ice, and fossil evidence on a dozen worlds. But never a transmission, never a voice from the stars. "Put it through," Jake said. The main screen flickered. A creature appeared that made several crew members gasp. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with a body covered in dark green armor plates. 4 arms extended from its torso. Its head was triangular, with compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds. When it spoke, the translation software turned its clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless words. "I am Ambassador Zekthar of the Galactic Unity Council. You are the species called humans. We have been watching you." Jake found his voice. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We welcome contact with your people." "This is not a greeting," Zekthar said. "This is a notification. Your species has expanded beyond your home system. You have established colonies. You now fall under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Unity Council." "I'm not familiar with this council," Jake said carefully. "Ignorance does not grant exemption. The council governs 473 species across this galactic sector. We have maintained order for 12,000 of your years. All spacefaring species must join and contribute to the common good." Jake glanced at Kevin, who was recording everything. "We're always interested in cooperation with other civilizations." "You misunderstand. This is not negotiation. Under galactic law, all new species must pay an entry tribute. You will provide 30% of all resources, technology, and biological information annually. This tribute grants you protection and access to galactic trade networks." The bridge went silent. 30% of everything humanity produced, every year, forever. "That's a significant demand," Jake said. "It is standard. Every species in the galaxy has paid it. Your compliance is not optional. I need to consult with my government. You have 30 Earth days to arrange payment. Refusal will result in enforcement action. The Council's military power is absolute. Resistance is impossible." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Jake stood frozen for a moment, then turned to Kevin. "Get me Earth Defense Command. Priority 1. Then contact President Hayes' office. They need to see this immediately." The message reached Earth 6 hours later. Admiral Ben Carter watched the recording 3 times in his office at Defense Command Headquarters in Colorado. Each time, his jaw got tighter. By the 3rd viewing, he was pacing. He called President Laura Hayes in Geneva. She answered from her office, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes sharp behind thin glasses. "You've seen it?" Ben asked. "Twice. I'm watching it again now." Laura paused the recording on Zekthar's face. 30% of everything, every year. "It's extortion," Ben said. "It's tribute, the old kind, the kind empires demanded from conquered peoples." Laura leaned back in her chair. "How much do we know about this council? Our deep space probes have been picking up strange signals for years. We thought they were natural phenomena. Turns out we were detecting an entire civilization. Hundreds of civilizations. And they want us to pay for the privilege of existing in their neighborhood. That's about the size of it." Laura was quiet for a moment. "Call an emergency session. Every government representative. Every colony administrator. We need consensus on this. The meeting happened 2 days later. Representatives gathered in person and by hologram from every human settlement. Mars sent Governor Patricia Mills. The Belt Colonies sent Coordinator Frank Chen. New Terra sent Administrator Karen White. Ships in deep space connected through quantum communication links. Laura stood before them all and played the transmission. When it ended, the room erupted. Voices overlapped, some angry, some afraid, all demanding answers. "They can't just demand tribute," Patricia said. "We've built everything we have through our own effort." "They claim to have technology that spans 12,000 years, Frank pointed out. "If they're even half as powerful as they claim, we can't fight them." "So we just give them a third of everything?" Karen asked. "Our resources, our technology, our freedom?" "What choice do we have?" someone called out. The argument raged for hours. Some wanted to negotiate, to ask for better terms. Others wanted to refuse outright. A few suggested hiding, abandoning the outer colonies and retreating to the solar system where humanity might escape notice. Laura listened to it all. Finally, she stood and raised her hand. The room went quiet. "I've heard everyone's concerns. I understand the fear. But I need to ask you all something. What did we come to space for?" The question hung in the air. Our ancestors left Earth because they wanted more than one world could offer. They went to Mars, knowing they might die in the attempt. They pushed to the belt, despite the dangers. They built ships that could cross the void between stars because they refused to accept limits. Laura walked to the window, looking out at the Earth below. "We've survived wars that nearly ended our species. We've overcome plagues, asteroids, and our own worst impulses. We learned to work together not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. We reached the stars because we refused to give up." She turned back to face them. "And now someone we've never met tells us to hand over 30% of everything we've built, to pay for permission to exist, to accept their authority without question or choice." "What are you saying?" Patricia asked quietly. "I'm saying we need to decide who we are. Are we the species that conquered space, or are we the species that bows to the first bully we meet?" The room went silent again. But this time, the silence had weight. Laura could see the shift in their faces, fear turning to something harder, something determined. "I want every voice heard," Laura said. "Every colony, every ship, every settlement. This decision affects all of humanity. We have 28 days left. We'll spend them listening to our people. Then we'll give the council our answer." Over the next 4 weeks, humanity debated. On Earth, crowds gathered in public squares. On Mars, miners voted in their union halls. On distant colony ships, families discussed it over dinner. The question was everywhere. Should humanity pay the tribute? The broadcast went out on day 29. Every human settlement received it simultaneously. In homes, bars, ships, and stations, people stopped what they were doing to watch. President Laura Hayes stood before the cameras in a simple blue suit. Behind her, the flags of Earth's united government hung still. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something fierce. Captain Danny Rogers watched from the bridge of his colonial transport ship, the Endeavour. His crew gathered around the main screen. Danny had been hauling supplies between colonies for 15 years. He had never seen his crew this tense. Dr. Amy Sullivan paused her work at the terraform station on Kepler 442b. Around her, scientists and technicians crowded into the common room. Amy's hands shook slightly as she gripped her coffee cup. On Titan, miners stopped their drilling. On agricultural platforms orbiting Jupiter, farmers left their crops. In schools on Earth, teachers turned on screens so children could watch history being made. Laura began to speak. "Citizens of Earth and all human settlements, I address you today on a matter that affects our entire species. 29 days ago, we received first contact from an alien civilization. The Galactic Unity Council, representing hundreds of species, has informed us that we must pay tribute. 30% of all our resources, technology, and information every year, indefinitely. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Council tells us this is standard, that every species in the galaxy has accepted these terms. They tell us their power is absolute, their authority unquestionable. They have given us 30 days to comply. Laura's voice remained steady. I have spent these weeks listening to humanity. I've heard from workers on Mars and farmers on Europa. I've received messages from ship crews in deep space and families on the newest colonies. I've listened to the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the brave and the afraid. Danny leaned forward in his chair. Around him, his crew barely breathed. And humanity has spoken clearly. We did not fight our way to the stars to surrender our freedom at the first demand. We did not survive centuries of struggle to become vassals to distant masters. Amy felt tears forming in her eyes. She knew what was coming. The Council believes we will comply because we are weak, because we are new, because we have no choice. But they do not understand what it means to be human. We have always had a choice. Sometimes the choice is between submission and destruction. And throughout our history, when faced with that choice, humanity has chosen to stand. Laura's voice grew stronger. We acknowledge the Council's power. We recognize our position as newcomers to galactic civilization. We are willing to trade, to cooperate, to learn from older species. But we will do so as equals, not as subjects. She looked directly into the camera. Therefore, humanity's response to the demand for tribute is this: denied. The word fell like a hammer. In the silence that followed, Danny could hear his own heartbeat. We deny the Council's claim to authority over us. We deny their right to demand tribute. We deny that might makes right, that age grants dominion, or that survival requires submission. Laura's expression softened slightly. I know this decision brings danger. I know the Council will not accept our refusal peacefully. But some things are worth the risk. Freedom is worth the risk. The right to determine our own fate is worth the risk. The dignity of standing on our own feet is worth the risk. She straightened her shoulders. To the Galactic Council I say this: humanity seeks peace. We offer friendship and cooperation between equals. We will defend ourselves if attacked, but we will not fire the first shot. The choice between peace and war is now yours. The broadcast ended. For 3 full seconds, silence held across human space. Then the cheering began. On the Endeavor, Danny's crew erupted in shouts and applause. People hugged each other, laughed, and cried. Danny sat quietly, proud and terrified in equal measure. At the terraform station, Amy and her colleagues celebrated, but Amy noticed the military personnel in the room were not cheering. Their faces were grim. They knew what came next. On Earth, crowds poured into the streets. Cities around the world erupted in celebration. People who had never met embraced as if they were family. Humanity had faced the galaxy and refused to blink. But in military command centers, a different mood prevailed. Admiral Ben Carter stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human ship and station. They'll come for us now, said General Chris Matthews, head of planetary defense. I know, Ben replied. Can we win? Ben looked at the displays. 300 military ships, maybe another 200 civilian vessels that could be armed, against an empire that claimed to rule hundreds of worlds. No, he said honestly, but we can make them pay for every inch. The Council's response came 3 days later. Ambassador Zekthar appeared again, this time broadcasting to all human channels simultaneously. Your refusal has been noted, the alien said. The Council finds it both surprising and disappointing. In 12,000 years, no species has rejected the tribute system. You are alone in your defiance. Zekthar's compound eyes glittered. The Council offers one final opportunity for compliance, Agree to the tribute within 7 days, and enforcement action will be avoided. Refuse, and the Council will be forced to demonstrate why the tribute system has endured for so long. The transmission included images. Vast fleets of alien warships, each larger than humanity's biggest vessels. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that made ships nearly invulnerable. The message was clear: resist and die. Laura watched the transmission with Ben and her senior advisors. 7 days, she said quietly. They're giving us a chance to back down. Are you considering it? Ben asked. Laura shook her head. No, but they needed to make the offer, for the record, so they can say they tried diplomacy. Then we need to prepare, General Matthews said. I'm ordering all non-essential personnel evacuated from the frontier colonies. They won't go, Laura said. I know our people. They'll want to stay and fight. She was right. When evacuation orders went out, the colonies refused. On New Terra, Administrator Karen White sent back a simple message. We stayed here through storms, crop failures, and isolation. We're not leaving now. Instead of evacuating, the colonies prepared to fight. Mining equipment was converted into weapons. Civilian ships were fitted with whatever arms could be found. People who had never held a weapon began training. On the Endeavor, Danny received orders to return to Earth. He called his crew together. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the nearest station. No judgment, but I'm staying out here. If the Council comes, someone needs to slow them down. Not one crew member left. Instead, they began welding armor plates to the hull and mounting mining lasers as weapons. Dr. Amy Sullivan watched engineers at the terraform station building missile launchers. We're scientists, she said to her colleague, Dr. Peter Grant. We came here to study atmospheres and chemistry. We're also human, Peter replied, and humans don't run when bullies come calling. The 7 days passed. Laura did not change her answer. On the final day, she broadcast one more message. To the Galactic Council, humanity reaffirms its position. We will not pay tribute. We will defend our freedom. If you choose war, know that you chose it, not us. History will record who sought peace and who brought violence. The Council's reply came within hours. A massive fleet was being dispatched. 5,000 warships under Grand Admiral Vorkesh. Their mission was simple: break humanity or destroy it. Ben Carter mobilized every ship humanity had. Reservists were called back to service. Retired officers returned to duty. Construction yards worked day and night, building weapons and armor. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. People in their 60s and 70s who had fought in the last Earth conflicts signed up again. Teenagers barely old enough to serve lied about their ages to join. Laura toured the preparations, visiting shipyards and training centers. Everywhere she went, people asked the same question. Did we do the right thing? She always gave the same answer. We did the only thing. Some prices are too high, even for survival. If we had paid the tribute, we would have survived. But we wouldn't have been human anymore. On the Defiance, Commander Jake Morrison prepared his ship for battle. His crew worked with focused intensity, checking every system, running every drill. They knew the odds. They chose to fight anyway. The council chamber on the capital world of Zentaris hummed with outrage. 473 species had gathered in the massive hall, their representatives filling seats that rose in circles toward a domed ceiling painted with scenes of galactic unity. Ambassador Zekthar stood at the central podium, his 4 arms spread wide. The humans have refused, he announced, his voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. They have rejected the tribute that every civilized species pays. They have denied the Council's authority. The chamber erupted. Representatives clicked, hissed, chirped, and roared their disbelief. Never in 12,000 years had a species refused the tribute. The system was perfect, unchanging, eternal. Counselor Vexra, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, spoke in tones that rang like bells. Perhaps they do not understand. They are young, barely evolved beyond their home world. Send clearer terms. I sent the clearest terms possible, Zekthar replied. They understood perfectly. Their leader used one word, denied. Then she broadcast defiance to her entire species. One species against the entire council, said Counselor Throck, a massive creature covered in scales. This is not defiance. This is suicide. But Grand Counselor Maltar, oldest member of the council, raised a tentacle for silence. Maltar's species had paid tribute for 8,000 years. He spoke with the weight of ages. This is not about one species. If we allow the humans to refuse, others will question why they pay. The tribute system maintains order across thousands of worlds. If it cracks, chaos follows. The chamber went silent. Every representative understood. The tribute system was not just about resources, it was about control, about maintaining the hierarchy that kept the galaxy stable. We must make an example, Maltar continued. One so severe that no species will ever dare refuse again. The vote was unanimous. The council would send an enforcement fleet, not a small force to encourage compliance, but an overwhelming armada to crush resistance completely. Grand Admiral Vorkesh received command of the operation. He was a member of the Draxis species, reptilian beings who had conquered their entire star cluster before joining the council. Vorkesh had broken 17 rebellions in his career. He had never failed to restore order. He assembled 5,000 warships at the council's main military base. The fleet represented technology refined over millennia. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy cities. Their shields could withstand anything short of a supernova. Their sensors could track a single ship across light years. Vorkesh studied the intelligence reports on humanity. The species had been spacefaring for less than 300 years. Their technology was crude, their ships small, their weapons primitive. They had 300 military vessels at most, cobbled together from mining equipment and commercial transports. This will be over in hours, he told his command staff. We will position the fleet around their home world. They will see our power and surrender immediately. We will not even need to fire a shot. His second-in-command, a being named Kresh, nodded agreement. And if they do not surrender? Then we will sterilize one of their colonies as demonstration. After they watch a world die, they will comply. The fleet departed Zentaris in a display of overwhelming force. 5,000 ships moving in perfect formation, blotting out the stars. The journey to human space took 12 days. On Earth, Captain Ellen Price watched the approaching fleet from her position aboard Defense Platform 7, orbiting New Terra. Her screens showed the Council Armada as a massive cloud of contacts, each one larger than her entire station. She opened a channel to the colony below. Administrator White, you're seeing this? Karen White's voice came back steady. We see it, Ellen. Bigger than we hoped. You should evacuate now. Get people to the shelters. Already done. But we're not abandoning the colony. Ellen understood. She had grown up on New Terra. This was home. Running felt wrong, even when staying meant dying. Across human space, similar conversations happened. Admiral Ben Carter coordinated the defense from Earth Command, watching scout reports of the approaching fleet. General Chris Matthews prepared ground defenses, knowing they would likely never be tested because the battle would be over long before the enemy reached the planet. Commander Jake Morrison gathered the human defense fleet at a point they had designated Terra's Gate, the outer edge of the solar system. 300 ships against 5,000. The math was brutal. All ships, this is Morrison. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. Most of us won't survive this. But we're not here to win. We're here to make them pay. Every minute we hold them is another minute for Earth to prepare. Every ship we take down is one less that reaches our home. Captain Danny Rogers listened from the Endeavor, now fitted with mining lasers and missile pods welded to its hull. His ship was designed to haul cargo, not fight wars. But he had positioned it in the defense line anyway. Dr. Amy Sullivan had refused evacuation from the terraform station. Instead, she had volunteered to help the military. She sat in Earth Command now, monitoring the approaching fleet and running calculations. "They're not even trying to hide," she told Admiral Carter. "They're coming straight at us in formation. They're confident we can't hurt them." "Can we?" Ben asked. Amy looked at her data. The Council shields were generations beyond human technology. Their weapons could destroy human ships from ranges humanity could not match. Their numbers were overwhelming. "Not conventionally," she admitted. "But we might not have to play conventionally." The Council fleet arrived at Terra's gate exactly on schedule. The massive formation filled space like a metal wall. Vorkesh broadcast to the human ships on all channels. "Human vessels, you are outmatched. Surrender now and your species will be spared. The Council is merciful to those who accept their proper place." Jake Morrison took a breath before responding. He thought about his daughter, about all the children across human space who deserved better than a life lived on their knees. "Council Fleet, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your demand for tribute was denied. Your threat of force is denied. Turn around, or we will defend our home." Silence fell across the communication channels. Vorkesh could not believe what he had heard. 300 primitive ships facing 5,000 advanced warships, and the humans were threatening him. "You cannot win," Vorkesh said slowly. "My shields will stop your weapons. My firepower will destroy you. This is not courage. This is madness." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But it's our madness. Last chance to leave peacefully." Vorkesh's response was to order his fleet forward. The 5,000 ships advanced in a wall of metal and energy. Their weapons powered up, filling space with enough destructive force to crack planets. Jake watched them come. His hands were steady on the controls. Around him, his bridge crew sat at their stations with the calm focus of people who had accepted death and chosen to fight anyway. "All ships," Jake said quietly. "Engage." The human fleet broke formation. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, each ship scattered in different directions. It was chaos, the opposite of every military doctrine. The Council fleet hesitated, confused by tactics that made no sense. Captain Danny Rogers took the Endeavor on a wild course, accelerating toward the Council line at full speed. His navigator, a young woman named Katie Moore, called out course corrections, while his weapons officer, Steve Walsh, targeted the nearest Council ship. "Sir, we're on a collision course," Katie said. "I know," Danny replied. "Steve, charge the FTL drive." "For a jump? At this range?" "Trust me." The Endeavor screamed toward the Council fleet. At the last possible second, Danny activated the FTL drive. The ship vanished from normal space and reappeared inside the Council formation, emerging directly behind a massive cruiser. The Council ship's shields were facing forward, protecting against the expected attack. Danny fired every weapon the Endeavor had into the unshielded rear section. The cruiser exploded. "Jump again," Danny ordered, "before they can target us." The Endeavor jumped away, appearing on the edge of the formation. Other human ships saw the tactic and copied it. FTL jumps at impossibly close range, appearing inside enemy formations where shields could not protect. It was suicidal. The drives were not designed for combat jumps. Half the ships that tried it suffered critical failures, but the tactic worked. Council ships began exploding as human vessels appeared in their midst, fired everything they had, and jumped away before return fire could destroy them. Vorkesh watched in growing alarm. "Impossible. They are jumping inside our defensive perimeter. No species fights this way." "Perhaps that is why it works," Kresh observed. On Earth, Dr. Amy Sullivan made a discovery. She had been analyzing the Council ship's energy signatures and found something unexpected. Admiral Carter, their shields are optimized for energy weapons. That's what civilized species use. And we're not civilized, Ben said, understanding immediately. We still use, kind Commander Jake Morrison pulled himself from the wreckage of the Defiance's command chair. Smoke filled the bridge. Half his crew was dead or dying. The ship's main reactor was failing, and fires burned in 3 sections. Abandon ship, he ordered. Everyone to the escape pods. Sir, you need to leave too, Lieutenant Kevin Shaw said, blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. I'm right behind you. Go. Jake waited until the last crew member evacuated, then made his way to the final escape pod. The Defiance had been his home for 5 years. Now it was a dying hulk, atmosphere venting into space. He sealed the pod and launched. Behind him, the Defiance exploded as its reactor went critical. The blast took 2 Council ships with it, their shields weakened by continuous human attacks. Jake watched his ship die and felt nothing but cold determination. The battle was far from over. Captain Ellen Price commanded Defense Platform 7 from orbit around New Terra. Her station was not designed for combat, but engineers had welded weapons to every available surface. She coordinated fire from 12 platforms, creating a defensive sphere around the colony. Incoming, her tactical officer called out. 3 Council destroyers breaking formation, heading for the planet. Ellen targeted the lead ship with every weapon the platform had. Railguns fired, missiles launched. Even the station's emergency thrusters became weapons, using precious fuel to maneuver into better firing positions. The first destroyer's shields flickered under the assault. Ellen pressed the attack, pouring fire into the weakened section. The destroyer began to list, trailing debris. But the other 2 ships targeted the platform. Energy beams cut through the station's hull. Explosions ripped through deck after deck. Evacuate, Ellen ordered her crew. Get to the shuttles. What about you? Her second officer asked. Ellen looked at her controls. The station was dying. But it still had power. It still had weapons. And it still had a reactor that could be overloaded. I'm staying. Someone has to guide this thing. Now go. That's an order. Her crew reluctantly evacuated. Ellen sealed the command deck and changed course, aiming the dying station directly at the largest Council ship. She armed the reactor overload sequence and set it for manual detonation. The Council ships tried to move, but the platform was already too close. Ellen smiled grimly and triggered the overload. The explosion lit up space like a new sun. The platform and 40 Council ships vanished in the blast. On New Terra below, people watched the light and knew what Ellen had done. They would remember her name. Dr. Amy Sullivan worked frantically in Earth Command, analyzing every piece of data from the battle. Admiral Ben Carter stood nearby, directing fleet movements and trying to coordinate a defense that was falling apart. We've lost 60% of our ships, General Chris Matthews reported. The Council has lost maybe 800. We're being overwhelmed. Amy stared at her screens, looking for any advantage. The human tactics had surprised the Council, but surprise only lasted so long. Now the enemy was adapting, and humanity was running out of tricks. Then she saw it. A pattern in the Council communications. Every ship was connected to every other ship through a synchronized network. It made them efficient, allowing perfect coordination across thousands of vessels. They're all linked, she said suddenly. One network, connecting the entire fleet. Ben understood immediately. A network can be hacked. Or infected, Amy said. If we could get a virus into their system, we could disrupt their coordination. Do we have anything that could work? Amy thought for a moment. Maybe. But we would need to deliver it directly to their flagship. Physical contact with their network. A suicide run, Ben said. Yes. Ben looked at the tactical display. Humanity was losing. Ships were falling faster than they could be replaced. Without something to change the momentum, the battle would be over within hours. "Do it," he ordered. "Build your virus. I'll find someone to deliver it." Lieutenant Kevin Shaw had taken command of a small frigate after escaping the Defiance. The ship was battered, its crew exhausted, but they were still fighting. When the call came for volunteers for a suicide mission, Kevin did not hesitate. "I'll do it," he said simply. His crew wanted to argue, but they saw his expression and stayed silent. Kevin transferred to an even smaller ship, barely more than a shuttle with engines. Amy's virus was loaded into a specialized drone that would attach to the Council flagship and upload the infection. "You have to get within 50 meters, Amy explained over the comm. "The drone will do the rest, but you have to survive long enough to launch it." "Understood," Kevin said. "If this works, tell Commander Morrison it was an honor serving with him." Kevin launched his tiny ship into the chaos of battle. Council fire filled space around him, but his ship was small and fast. He dodged between larger vessels, using debris as cover. The Council flagship was enormous, 10 times the size of the largest human ship. Its shields glowed with absorbed energy from constant combat. Getting close would be nearly impossible. Kevin pushed his engines beyond safe limits. Alarms screamed warnings he ignored. A Council beam cut past him so close his hull plating melted. He kept going. At 100 meters, a Council fighter spotted him and opened fire. Kevin's shields failed instantly. His hull breached in 3 places, but he was close enough. He launched the drone. The small device shot forward, too fast for point defense to track. It attached to the flagship's hull and began burning through armor with a fusion torch. Kevin's ship exploded under sustained fire. His last thought was hope that the virus would work. On the Council flagship, Grand Admiral Vorkesh felt the first signs of the virus 3 minutes after the drone attached. Displays flickered. Communication channels went silent. Navigation systems reported conflicting data. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Unknown," Kresh replied, frantically working his console. "The network is destabilizing. Ships are losing coordination." Across the Council fleet, 5,000 vessels suddenly could not talk to each other. The synchronized network that made them so efficient had become a vulnerability. Ships drifted out of formation. Targeting systems failed. The perfect military machine began to fall apart. "Humans," Vorkesh hissed. "They infected our systems." He tried to issue orders, but the communication network was chaos. Half his ships could not receive commands. The other half received contradictory instructions from damaged relay nodes. Admiral Ben Carter saw the Council fleet's formation collapse and immediately understood what had happened. "All ships," he broadcast. "The enemy is blind and confused. Hit them now. Hit them hard." The remaining human ships attacked with everything they had. They targeted engines instead of reactors, weapons instead of life support. Humanity was not trying to kill the Council crews, just to disable their ships. Captain Danny Rogers brought the Endeavour alongside a Council cruiser and fired into its engine banks. The cruiser went dead in space, powerless but intact. Danny moved to the next target, then the next. Across the battlefield, human ships followed the same pattern. Cripple, do not kill. Show mercy even in desperation. Vorkesh watched his fleet being systematically disabled. His shields were failing. His weapons were offline. His ships drifted helplessly while human vessels darted between them like predators among wounded prey. But the humans were not finishing them. They disabled ships and moved on, leaving the crews alive. "Why do they not destroy us?" Kresh asked. "They could kill us all." Vorkesh had no answer. In his entire career, he had never seen an enemy show mercy. You fought until one side was destroyed. That was the way of war. But humans fought differently. Even now, when they had the advantage, they chose to spare lives. "Admiral," Kresh said quietly, "we have lost." If we continue, they may stop showing mercy. Forkesh looked at his displays. His fleet was crippled. His network was destroyed. He had failed to break humanity, and in the process, humanity had broken him. He made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships cease fire. We are withdrawing. The Council fleet began a slow, painful retreat. Damaged ships helped each other limp away from human space. It took hours to organize because the network was still down, but gradually the 5,000 vessels pulled back. Jake Morrison, now aboard a rescue ship after his escape pod was recovered, watched the enemy retreat. Around him, exhausted human crews cheered weakly. They had won, though the cost had been terrible. "Get me a count," Jake asked. "How many ships did we lose?" The numbers came back slowly. 214 human ships destroyed, thousands dead, entire crews gone. But humanity had held. Against impossible odds, they had defended their home. On Earth, President Laura Hayes watched the Council fleet withdraw. She felt no joy in the victory, only sorrow for the lives lost and determination to make their sacrifice mean something. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Humanity, a species barely 300 years into space travel, had defeated the Council's enforcement fleet. 5,000 warships had retreated from 300 human vessels. The impossible had happened. On the planet Nexara, a world that had paid tribute for 6,000 years, workers in the ore processing plants stopped their labor. They gathered in quiet groups, speaking in hushed voices about the humans who had said no. On Kelvin Prime, students at the Galactic Academy pulled up every piece of information they could find about Earth. They studied human history, looking for clues about how such a young species could be so fierce. On thousands of worlds across hundreds of systems, beings who had never questioned the tribute system began to ask a simple question: why do we pay? The Galactic Unity Council convened in emergency session. The chamber that had been filled with confident voices after humanity's refusal now hummed with uncertainty and fear. Ambassador Zekthar stood at the central podium, his compound eyes dimmer than usual. Grand Admiral Forkesh has reported total failure. The enforcement fleet has been crippled. We lost over 800 ships. The humans lost fewer than half their force. The chamber erupted in angry clicks, hisses, and roars. Counselor Throck's voice boomed over the others. "How is this possible? We sent 5,000 ships against primitive vessels." "The humans do not fight like other species," Zekthar explained. "They use tactics we have never encountered. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They show mercy when they could destroy. They are unpredictable." Grand Counselor Maltar raised a tentacle for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke with the weight of ages. "We face a choice. We can escalate, sending 10,000 ships, then 20,000, until we crush humanity completely. Or we can reconsider our approach." "Reconsider?" Counselor Vexra's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. "The tribute system has maintained order for 12,000 years. If we let humanity refuse, every species will refuse." "Perhaps," Maltar said slowly. "Or perhaps the tribute system has endured not because it is right, but because no one had the courage to challenge it until now." The chamber went silent. The idea was radical, almost heretical. The tribute system was the foundation of galactic civilization. Without it, what would hold the galaxy together? But Maltar continued. "I have reviewed human history. They are a violent species, yes. They have fought countless wars among themselves, but they have also shown a capacity for change that we have not. When their old systems failed, they built new ones. When their conflicts threatened to destroy them, they learned to cooperate." He paused, letting his words settle. "They offer us a choice. We can continue as we have, enforcing tribute through fear. Or we can accept their proposal. Cooperation between equals." The debate that followed lasted for 3 weeks. Some counselors wanted immediate escalation. Others argued for negotiation. Still others suggested ignoring humanity entirely, letting them exist outside the galactic order. Finally, Maltar called for a vote. The question was simple. Should the Council reform the tribute system to allow species to join as partners rather than vassals? The vote was close, but it passed. The tribute system would be reformed. Species could choose partnership over subjugation. Ambassador Zekthar received the assignment to return to human space. He traveled alone this time, not with a fleet but with a diplomatic vessel. When he arrived at Earth, he requested a meeting with President Laura Hayes. They met in Geneva, in a conference room overlooking the city. Laura sat across from the alien ambassador, with Admiral Ben Carter and Dr. Amy Sullivan flanking her. Zekthar's translator rendered his clicks into words. President Hayes, the Council has reconsidered its position. We wish to discuss new terms. I'm listening, Laura said carefully. The tribute system will be reformed. Species may now join the galactic community as partners, contributing what they choose rather than what is demanded. The Council will provide access to trade networks, shared technology, and mutual defense in exchange for voluntary cooperation. Laura studied the alien carefully. This is a significant change. What caused it? You did, Zekthar said simply. You showed us that our system was not unbreakable. You proved that there might be another way. The Council has voted to try that way. And if we refuse this offer too, then humanity remains outside the galactic community. We will not attack you again. The Council has learned that enforcing tribute on unwilling species costs more than it gains. Laura looked at Ben and Amy. They nodded slightly. She turned back to Zekthar. We accept, but on equal terms. Humanity will share technology and resources as a partner, not a subject. We will cooperate in mutual defense and participate in galactic governance. But we will never pay tribute, and we will never submit to authority we did not choose. Those terms are acceptable, Zekthar said. Over the following months, humanity integrated into galactic civilization. It was a slow process, filled with misunderstandings and challenges. Human and alien scientists struggled to understand each other's frameworks. Human traders learned to navigate markets that had existed for millennia. Human diplomats joined the council chamber, bringing new perspectives to ancient debates. Captain Danny Rogers converted the Endeavor back to a cargo hauler and began running trade routes to alien worlds. His first journey to Nexara took 40 days. The natives there greeted him with celebration, calling him a hero of liberation. We're not heroes, Danny told them. We just refused to kneel. You could have done the same. But we did not, the Nexaran elder replied. You had the courage we lacked. Now we learn from your example. Dr. Amy Sullivan led scientific exchanges between human and alien researchers. She worked with beings whose species had studied physics for 5,000 years, learning theories humanity had never imagined. In return, she shared human approaches to problem-solving, methods that seemed chaotic to older species but often led to breakthrough insights. You think differently than we do, a Kelvin scientist told her. You see problems we do not notice because we are too focused on established methods. Maybe that's what happens when you're too young to know what's impossible, Amy replied. Admiral Ben Carter oversaw the rebuilding of the Earth Defense Fleet. Many ships lost in the battle were replaced, but the new vessels incorporated both human and alien technology. The fleet remained independent, but it coordinated with Council forces on mutual defense initiatives. Commander Jake Morrison, promoted to Admiral after the battle, took command of humanity's first joint task force with alien species. His flagship, the New Defiance, carried a crew of both humans and aliens learning to work together. The cooperation was not always smooth. Humans found some alien customs incomprehensible. Aliens struggled with human emotional expression and chaotic decision-making. But gradually, understanding grew. 5 years after first contact, President Laura Hayes attended her final council session before retiring. The chamber had changed. More species now attended as partners rather than subjects. The tribute system still existed for those who wanted its protection, but payment was voluntary. Ambassador Zekthar approached her after the session. "Your term as president ends soon. What will you do?" "Rest," Laura said. "Let younger people carry the burden. I've done my part." "You did more than your part. You changed the galaxy." Laura shook her head. "I just said no. Anyone could have done it. But no one did. Not for 12,000 years. That is what makes it remarkable." The new president, a younger woman named Lisa Grant, took office with a mandate to continue Laura's work. She appointed Danny Rogers as ambassador to the outer colonies, Amy Sullivan as science advisor, and gave Ben Carter a seat on the reformed Council Defense Committee. The galaxy continued to change. Some species left the council entirely, choosing independence. Others formed new partnerships and alliances. The old order that had seemed eternal proved flexible when challenged. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, they built a memorial to those who died defending humanity's freedom. The monument was simple: a black granite wall with the names of every person lost in the battle. At the top, carved in letters 2 feet high, was a single word: denied. Below it, in smaller text, an explanation. When the galaxy demanded tribute, humanity responded with this word: not because we sought war, but because some things are worth any price. Freedom is worth defending. Dignity is worth preserving. The right to stand as equals cannot be bargained away. The memorial became a gathering place. Veterans came to remember fallen comrades. Students came to learn about the battle. Aliens visiting Earth came to understand what humanity had fought for. Jake Morrison visited the memorial on the 5th anniversary of the battle. He found Lieutenant Kevin Shaw's name and traced it with his fingers. Kevin had delivered the virus that turned the tide. He had died doing it. "We won," Jake said quietly to the name on the wall, "and we're using the victory right. Cooperation, not conquest. Partnership, not domination. You'd be proud of what we've built." Across the galaxy, humanity's story became legend. The species that said no. The newcomers who challenged an empire. The defenders who showed mercy to defeated enemies. On Nexara, children learned about the Battle of Terra's Gate in school. On Kelvin Prime, the Academy made human military tactics required study. On Zentaris, the council capital, they erected a statue of Laura Hayes with the inscription, "She taught us that authority must be earned, not demanded." Dr. Amy Sullivan, now in her 60s, gave lectures across the galaxy about humanity's approach to problems. "We succeed," she told audiences, "not because we are stronger or smarter than other species. We succeed because we are too stubborn to accept impossible. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we hear it as a challenge, not a limitation." The reforms continued. The tribute system gradually faded as more species chose partnership. The council transformed from an empire enforcing order to a federation encouraging cooperation. It was a slow change, taking decades, but it was real. Admiral Ben Carter retired after 15 years of service. At his farewell ceremony, representatives from 40 species attended. A Draxis officer, one of Vorkesh's former subordinates, approached him. "You taught us something important," the alien said. "Victory is not always about destruction. You could have killed us all when you had the chance. Instead, you disabled our ships and let us live. That mercy made us question everything we believed about warfare." "We're not perfect," Ben replied. "We've made plenty of mistakes. But we try to learn from them. That is what makes you different. You change. We stayed the same for 12,000 years. You forced us to evolve." Danny Rogers, now ambassador to the outer colonies, traveled constantly between human and alien settlements. He saw cooperation growing, barriers breaking down, and understanding replacing fear. It was not perfect, but it was progress. One day, on a remote station near the Galactic Rim, he met a young alien who asked him about the battle. "Were you afraid?" the alien asked. "Terrified," Danny admitted. "We all were, but we fought anyway." "Why?" Danny thought about his answer carefully. "Because some things are more important than safety, freedom, dignity, the right to choose our own path. We could have paid the tribute and survived, but we would have been slaves, even comfortable ones. We chose to risk everything rather than accept that." The young alien nodded slowly. "My species is considering leaving the tribute system, following humanity's example, but our leaders are afraid." "Fear is natural," Danny said, "but ask yourself, do you want to live free or live safe? Sometimes you can have both, but when you cannot, which matters more?" He left the alien to consider that question, the same question humanity had answered 5 years earlier. As decades passed, humanity's influence on the galaxy grew not through conquest, but through example. The species that had said no became the species that showed another way was possible. Young civilizations looked to Earth as proof that newcomers could stand as equals with the ancients, and on Earth, in Geneva, the memorial stood as reminder of the price humanity had paid for that equality. The word "denied" remained carved in stone, a simple statement of principle that had changed the galaxy forever. Humanity had reached the stars not by permission, but by determination. They had defended their place not with overwhelming force, but with courage and sacrifice. And they had built a future not of domination, but of cooperation between equals. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be. Dr. Amy Sullivan sat at her console, tears running down her face. Her virus had worked, but Kevin Shaw was dead. So many others were dead. The price of freedom had been paid in blood. Admiral Ben Carter stood in the command center, looking at the casualty lists. Every name represented someone who had chosen to fight rather than surrender, someone who believed freedom was worth dying for. "What now?" General Matthews asked. "Now we rebuild," Ben said, "and we prepare for the Council's response. This was one battle. The war may just be beginning." But across the galaxy, word of humanity's victory was spreading. The invincible Council had been defeated. The tribute system had been challenged. And for the first time in 12,000 years, species began to wonder if there might be another way. Tick weapons, railguns, missiles, even old-fashioned explosives. Our weapons are primitive, but their shields are not designed to stop them. Ben sent the information to every human ship. Within minutes, tactics changed. Energy weapons stopped firing. Instead, humanity used the crude kinetic weapons the galaxy considered obsolete. Railgun rounds punched through Council shields. Missiles slipped past energy barriers designed to stop lasers. Explosive charges that would have been useless against proper defenses tore into advanced alien hulls. Lieutenant Kevin Shaw, now commanding a small frigate after the Defiance took critical damage, watched his railgun rounds tear through a Council destroyer's shields like they were not even there. Why don't they adapt? He wondered aloud. His tactical officer had the answer. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They don't know how to change. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but Council ships fell too. Not enough to win, but enough to matter. Enough to prove that humanity could hurt them. Aye. The Council fleet entered human sensor range 2 weeks after Laura's refusal. The readings were overwhelming. 5,000 ships in perfect formation, advancing steadily toward Earth. Jake watched the displays and felt a strange calm settle over him. Humanity had made its choice. Now came the test of whether courage could overcome impossible odds. He thought of his daughter on Earth, 8 years old, who had drawn him a picture of his ship with "My Hero" written in crayon. He thought of all the children across human space who deserved to grow up free. "All ships," he broadcast to the assembled defense fleet. "This is Commander Morrison. The Council thinks we'll break when we see their numbers. They think fear will make us surrender. Let's show them what humanity really is." 300 human ships formed a defensive line at the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth prepared for the worst. Ahead of them, 5,000 alien warships advanced like a storm made of metal and fire. The answers came back. From the oldest settlements to the newest outposts, from the richest cities to the poorest stations, humanity spoke with one voice. No compromise, no submission, no tribute. On day 29, Laura prepared her response. Admiral Carter stood by, knowing what would come next. Commander Morrison watched from the Defiance, his crew gathered around him. Across 50 light years, billions of humans waited to hear their leader's words. Laura had never been more certain of anything in her life. She knew the risk. She understood the danger. But she also understood what humanity would lose if they bent the knee now. Some prices were too high, even for survival. She thought of all the humans who had died reaching for the stars. She thought of the children being born on worlds humanity had built with bare hands and fierce determination. She thought of what it meant to be human. Then she stepped in front of the cameras to deliver humanity's answer to the galaxy.